Continuing with the ongoing research into this video, I want to keep analyzing that article that I started last week relating to the serious study on antigens and how the world of this objective world of scientific research and objective reality is going to meet the mythology almost of the Entheogen research, the Entheogen reports, the Entheogen communities, which it has been very prevalent for the latter years now that we have internet and people are putting in the reports on forums or they are talking about it, and there's this large community, the Entheogen community, which is beginning to go into the mainstream due to this research that has started recently. Now, I've been speaking about this research in different ways. I've been meaning to make videos about this. It was last year we had the University in London, I can't remember the exact name right now, which started to do this research, and we also have David Knott, we have Chris Timmerman and others who are doing this research, but the focus of the research coming from the universities is for knowledge, to understand the phenomenon, to understand what's going on. And some of the researchers showing some amazing reports, which I will approach next video when I continue to review this article, and they start talking about the actual data, the factual data, and things that cannot be longer denied anymore. It has to do with how during these experiences, during this phenomenon, the brain waves turn into something different, akin to the REM cycle of people who go into deep sleep, and also how the connections in the brain actually have a response due to these substances, and the implications and the whole thing of all that. But what I want to talk about into this video is the implication of the business part of the research, start to get into it and turning the whole experience, which for many is something very ritualistic, it's something very sacred, for others is something you do at a party, something recreational. Now for the business industry that is gonna get a piece of the pie of the whole thing, is more about turning the experience into something very neutral, very lacking of ritualism, something that is a 20 to 25 minute session with therapists and so on and so forth. And what I want to speak about today is the implications of all of this. Is it something good? Is it something bad? What could happen? Do we actually even understand what's going on in the phenomenon to have a quote-unquote therapist just sit there and try to work through the experience of things that could be completely ineffable and we don't really understand at all? Or could it be something positive, that instead of putting a cultural filter on, like from some ritual or some shaman in South America, what if we turn the whole thing neutral and try to see what's behind all of this ritualism? What is the actual truth behind the phenomenon? All of these things I'm going to be trying to approach today. I'm going to be linking all of the videos reference below, or I'm going to post them on the screen when I talk about them. I'm going to keep doing this because this is important. I've been approaching these topics previously. Before I move forward, I would like to remind you that if you want to join the growing discussion on consciousness and would like to be notified on the latest scientific discoveries and theories surrounding this topic and how they connect to ancient mythologies and philosophies, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, as I'll try to upload at least one video per week as I continue with the outline. Alright, so as I probably mentioned in this video, I'm gonna try to continue to analyze this article on futurism, January 5th, 2022. Scientists are now testing medical DMT on human subjects. I use the word entheogens because this word is still very taboo sometimes. It can get you into trouble in the content that you're doing, but this is actual research. This is for medical purposes. This is something that I'm probably going to be speaking about today. We have to turn this idea of these taboos and all of these forbidden things into actual research. Because when I posted the previous video, some of the people were saying, "Oh, but they're gonna lie to you. They're gonna turn everything into a business. They're gonna ruin the ritualism. They're gonna ruin the magic." And perhaps, but at the same time, turning this phenomenon into something serious, into something of research, is necessary for us to one, understand what's really going on, understand the underlying reality of the phenomenon, and two, because there could be real potential societal improvements by going through this research. So it is necessary to approach it and to remove the taboo, to remove all the nonsense behind the idea of entheogen. The reason why I like the word entheogen is because it has a more researchable, more official and understandable concept, connotation, rather than the word drug or a different word, which probably has negative connotations. So we can start using these words, in my opinion. So as I said, Dr. Machinal, we'll see you now. In the previous video, I spoke about how this world of objective, rational research is meeting all the mythology of entheogens, is meeting these what people are reporting through their experiences, which is going into a different, perhaps parallel dimension, and meeting quote-unquote entities who seem to know everything, who seem to control the whole experience, who seem to control time, who seem to be giving people all this information about the reality of creation, the biggest mysteries in life. And as I said, one of the reasons why I include the research on entheogens into my outline, because by the name of this project that I have is a rational divine outline, I include this research because what the research is throwing out is not isolated to entheogen phenomenon. This occurs also in out-of-body experiences, in near-death experiences, and it is all over the ancient philosophies and mythologies of the world. And it all connects to the newer theories that we have on consciousness, on reality, on multiple universe of interdimensional travels, of reality not being as physical or as objective as we might think. I did that video on the double slit experiment. That's a very good introduction to the whole thing. I'm gonna link it somewhere around the screen. So in the previous video I spoke about this and how this also sometimes you see freaky looking machinals goes on the article. If you click here, it tells you a little bit about the machinals. I went into that video. I'm gonna put the link somewhere on the screen, and all of the links that I reference throughout the videos are always gonna be underneath in the description section of the videos. So the article goes on, and it says, even it has attracted a community of loyal devotees who turn to it for spiritual enlightenment and fun trips, because this is what all the reports are showing. Even though the research on these substances was banned, because perhaps it's showing people more than some of the higher powers want people to know. The main thing, I think I spoke about this somewhere along some of the videos that I make. It mainly had to do during the 60s and the hippie movement, and there was a war in Vietnam, and there was all these things going on, and they found out that when people, you know, started to understand these things, started to have these meeting with the entities and whatnot, they thought of the concept of going to a foreign country and shooting other people absolutely abhorrent and absolutely useless, especially when there was no imminent threat to their safety. Something completely irrational. And of course that is not good for a country who wants to go to war. So they banned the whole thing, and then so it's like the Middle Ages. We're stuck without knowledge, without understanding, in a world of lies. So now that the pharmaceutical investors are saying that they can make money on it, the business of psychedelics is currently undergoing a boom as scientists learn more about the mind-bending substances, potential for treating mental health issues, including post-traumatic stress disorder caused by such wars mainly, and depression. And you click here on the going, and boom, it takes you to takes you to a paywall of an article where you have to pay a monthly thing to look at the article. This is one of the issues now, and I'm seeing more and more and more. All of these articles are behind a paywall. The information is being restricted by this paywall. But mainly, if you psychedelics, battle patents, IP deals, market share, you know what the thing is about. It's about going for the patents, going for the research, and how they're gonna start bidding wars, and they're gonna put a price on it. And that is something awful, because this is probably something that could help so many people, and not only for depression, as the article goes on. This could help us, the official research on this could help us understand the nature of reality. Some of the people who, you know, have been in the research, that have experimented with the substances, if all the politicians in the world would go through a session of entheogens, the world would be completely different. And this is part of the Eleusinian mysteries, as I've spoken about. There's this researcher, his name is Brian Moore-Rescue, where he speaks about how most of the religions have been based probably on their own experiences with entheogens and the Eleusinian mysteries, which was this secret path to enlightenment by the ancient Greeks. A quick search on Brian Moore-Rescue will give you more on that, but we are in the midst of Pandora's box. We are about to uncover something amazing, and I find it incredibly abhorrent that most of the interest comes from the business and the undergoing boom on the whole thing. This should be something that the government should be doing, not the private investors. But I digress. So the main thing that should be noted here is that there are possible improvement in mental health for post-traumatic stress disorder and depression. Like this article said, that these companies are looking into the quote-unquote party drugs. This is something that the community around the entheogens should be starting to remove right now. These are not party drugs. These are not something to take lightly. There could be something potentially which could potentially change the world, and it must be addressed. It must be approached with respect, at least. Perhaps most intriguingly, some even suggest that the entities, quote unquote, that trippers frequently encounter on DMT could play a unique role in the therapeutic process. This is according to Dr. Carol Rutledge. Who is Carol Rutledge? 30 years of experience across UK and US based pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies in the non-profit sector, with a focus on drug acquisition and profiling of NCEs and biologics. Dr. Rutledge also has experience managing and sourcing opportunities at a semi-philanthropic dementia discovery fund. Other recent expertise includes leading the preclinical and clinical research strategy across Alzheimer's research, UK for response mode, strategic funding, and for global projects in building and leading as managing director an independent and global initiative focused on the early detection of neurodegenerative diseases. So it seems that this doctor is doing things for the right cause. I browsed a little bit on her, and she's got a lot of bits and pieces and articles on Alzheimer and whatnot. She's trying to get to the bottom of it. She also has a first-class honors degree in zoology and a PhD in neuropharmacology. So these are people who are trying to understand really what's the root of everything that's going on with this. Now, going on with how this is going to be applied, how this is going to happen. The process won't require patients to travel out into a remote desert or the wilds of the Amazon to take ayahuasca from a shaman either. Instead, patients will be taken to a comfortable dosing room complete with salted lamps and low lighting to create a relaxing ambience. Patients also undergo initial therapy to prepare for the experience. Then they're given an intravenous dose of DMT, and therapist sits quietly with them throughout the duration of their trip for about 20 to 25 minutes, according to Rutledge. After the trip, the patient undergoes an integration therapy session that's part aftercare and part brief, where they'll answer questions and detail their psychedelic experiences. They goes on, they want to find what's useful and helpful for the patient, and also what's important for the therapeutic aspects of the treatment. Whether or not it will actually work is still a question mark. They have only done this research on regular healthy individuals just to make sure that the process is safe, which is something that, according to the regular reports, there's no real issue physically for the substances. However, mentally, some people might not be prepared for what they're going to encounter. Now, that is another topic that they discuss that later, but what everything is showing is that mostly is positive. There are no intrinsic dangers, and there are indicators that it can not only work to help in these mental illnesses, but perhaps even have a profound and positive impact on patients' psyche. Now, there's a whole lot to take into account in this situation, in these paragraphs here. So I've thought about this for a long time. The idea that one day the research on entheogens is going to be normalized, and it's going to be like what they want to do, a session of 20 to 25 minutes. And this is something that they're speaking about here. It's not about going into the remote areas of South America. It's not about having an incredibly deep ritual, which is completely filtered to the cultural filters of the South American shamans. It has to do with looking at it in a more secular, neutral way, something that is easy to understand. Now, that is a problem. That is something good, and it is a problem at the same time. Number one, the way they approach it here is that, yes, someone will sit with them, and it's part of the therapy. They will include what helps them and what not. But what happens when these entities tell the people who go through these experiences that they are not real, and reality isn't real, and things of that nature? Is the therapist ready to answer those questions? Is the therapist ready to understand what really is going on, whether or not these quote-unquote entities are real or part of the person's psyche? I find these studies mind-blowing, and the attempt to normalize the situation a little bit off-putting, but at the same time, it opens the door to do the actual research and to really try to understand what's going on here. I don't think that these businesses, these small pharma, these people bidding for patents and whatnot, truly understand what's going on here. This is not like a little whatever. This is something that could lead us into finding out what's really going on at the core of reality itself. So there's a lot going on here with this research and with what it's trying to do and achieve, and some sort of final thoughts or conclusion. There's a few things that I really want to address, and that I'm gonna keep addressing as this research goes on. It has to do with these cultural filters that I'm talking about, developing what I want to call, and I've been wanting to do this video for a while, new theology, a new branch of study. We cannot have quote-unquote theology associated with specific dogmatic religions anymore. We have enough tools, enough data, enough research to start understanding the topic of death, the topic of metaphysics, these topics in a new light. And also I want to talk about normalizing this phenomenon in the right way. Not sitting 20 minutes with a therapist that does not understand really what's going on. So number one, we're going to the cultural filters. Now, surrounding the entheogen reports, the entheogen community, there's this idea that this medicine, as it is called by the community, has been around for a long time, and he's, as I said, just Google Brian Moore Rescue and go look at his work. He's doing some amazing work on trying to find out how is this connection between entheogens and ancient religions, sort of something that I was doing a bit a while ago. So these cultural filters, the idea of going to these retreats, and it is also being sold to the Western audience a lot, to North Americans, to Europeans, the idea of going to these retreats in South America or some other places in the world where they have some sort of ritual going on with them, and there is this chanting, these meditations. All of that can be very helpful. Now, I don't want people to think that I'm criticizing this or thinking that it's absolutely not necessary. It could help, and it could be very necessary. But as I've spoken about before in a video, talking about this ritualism, according to the things that I've seen, that I've studied, that I researched, it seems that all of these tools are simply, this ritualism are just tools. I spoke about this in a video. I'm going to link it somewhere on the screen. It's a bit of an old video, and I've been meaning to redo all of these videos now that I have more information, but I think it still stands. It has to do with how all of these ritualism are actually tools for your mind to conceive something, for your mind to prepare to be something, because it seems that everything pans out from our own mind, our own quote-unquote consciousness, our little fragment of consciousness, which in reality might be connected to a larger consciousness. This is one of the ideas concentrated in this theory of consciousness, which I want to go into as well. Pretty soon I'm going to be making a video about it. It's called the Orchestrated Objective Reduction by Penrose and Hameroff. I just googled that, OR. I might put a link below. And this is one of the theories that suggests that consciousness or bits of consciousness are connected with a larger field of consciousness. Now, these things are being researched. These things are coming forward. These things are what we need to understand. So, applying these cultural filters to the phenomenon, like the ritualism and the chanting, perhaps Mama Gaia or Mama Ayahuasca, according to some of the researchers, there might be some sort of entity or consciousness attached or associated to the whole of Earth. There might be there are a lot of studies that are starting to understand what souls actually are. Now, I'm going a little bit further here. These are things that I want to talk about in the third part of the outline. But there seems to be this Gaia is an actual thing. And when people go into these dimensions, into these trips, they actually connect to these entities, to these spirits, which are in mythology. The Celtic tribes thought there were spirits of nature and so on. These seem to be actually real, not in the way that we understand, but they are there. Now, applying the cultural filter, it seems that all of these experiences do act outside of our mind, but we have a lot of authority in them. I've spoken about this before, an altered state of consciousness, and how we might have some authority on this altered state of consciousness. It seems when people turn their thoughts about a thing, their settings change, their experience changes. So if we apply these cultural filters, whether it is ancient South American rituals, or we think we're on a path of enlightenment in the Buddhist sense of the word, we think that we're meeting angels by God, and we have a more Christian outlook on things. All of these are cultural filters, and at the same time, if our mind, if our consciousness has the ability to alter this experience, having these cultural filters could help us warm up to the idea, but at the same time, perhaps it's not the ultimate truth of it. So, turning this experience into something more neutral might not be all too bad, or perhaps understanding that this ritualism is merely tools for it, perhaps we would approach it with a different idea. These are all things that we do not understand, so by them simply removing all of these cultural filters, We don't know what's going to happen, but it is an interesting idea, and it is something that perhaps needs to be done for the research to go on. Now, these cultural filters, this ritualism, and these tools are there for a reason. As I said, the ancient peoples, the ancient cultures were not stupid. I've been saying this over and over, having to do with healings, having to do with these rituals of healing and of removing bad spirits and whatnot. These are there for a reason. Now, the way that we approach them, and in part of talking about how to properly normalize this, as I said during the article, I don't think that the regular therapist is ready to answer the question of whether reality is real or not, or whether who are these entities, who are these aliens, why do they look like that, why do I see these things. Am I really in a different dimension? I don't think the regular therapist has the tools to talk about this, and this is why I wanted to talk about this new theology. They're approaching the topic with the mindset of we're gonna make business. We're gonna have these 30-minute sessions. People are gonna go in, they're gonna go out, they're gonna try to normalize things. But we need a bed of research for all of this. We cannot have just anyone trying to say, oh yeah, your mind is creating this. As I'm gonna be talking about in the next video, it's a bunch of people saying the same thing, quote unquote, hallucinating the same thing. So I believe that as part of this research, as part of people trying to come into terms with the Entheogen research, with the UFO phenomenon, with disclosure, with the research on near-death experiences, with all of these things that are coming up, we need people who understand all of these things, who are acquainted with all of these altered states of consciousness, who are acquainted with the ancient philosophies that speak about this, literally. It's literally mentioned in the scriptures, in Hinduism, in all the forbidden texts, all over the place. It is written about this. We don't need theologians like the NASA. I spoke about this before on NASA scientists, just quote unquote hiring theologians to see how people are going to understand about this. We need a revolution in theology. We don't need theologians who are just basing their knowledge, their branch of study on ancient, dogmatic, and no longer relevant scriptures or ideas. We have all these new data to try to understand things correctly. And as I said, this is why I'm doing this whole project. We have all of these tools available. We have the information. If we put everything together, you can see that everything starts lining up, and they're talking about the same thing. And NDEs talk about entities, and entheogens talk about entities, and all of this, at the end of the day, seems to be very positive. Seems to be that there's a larger reality behind everything that is more positive than we think. But at the same time, having the ability to control our own experiences and to meet perhaps the not so positive part of this entheogen experience. There are a lot of people who go through the quote-unquote bad trips, who really come face to face with their biggest challenges, and they are not prepared to address this, to confront these things face to face. They're not prepared to comprehend that perhaps their individual ego is not real. So we need people who understand this. I made a whole video about this, what I think is the root of these negative altered states of consciousness, whether you call them bad trips, whether you call them hellish NDEs, and even some other situations. As I said, we might be dealing with something more complex than we think. So I believe that if this idea of approaching the concepts as these 30-minute sessions, it's a good idea on paper. It's something that perhaps one day is going to be amazing. When we have these tools that I'm talking about in place, when we have these new, I don't know if to call them theologians, let's call them, I don't know, guides or actual prepared therapists who understand all of these things. I do like the idea of a theological revolution where these new theologians are not going to be attached to any religion, but rather the actual current research on altered states of consciousness, on entheogens, on these ancient philosophies, as I said, all of these. And these new theologians are going to look at it with the data on their hands, with the studies on their hands, with the new ideas of holographic theory, with all the information on quantum physics, with everything that we have at hand. This is why I'm saying, if we truly understand what's going on right now, and the Pandora's box that is about to open, this could change the world entirely. So I believe that this research is leading into that, is giving way to that, is opening the door to it. Even though these big pharma, the small pharma, or whoever company it is that are gonna be bidding for these patents, are just gonna think, oh yeah, we're gonna do like a 20-30 minute session. We have therapists, and it's gonna be like this and like that. Perhaps at the beginning they're gonna start to understand it's not as simple as that, and it's gonna lead into just putting more effort into it, into this consciousness revolution that has been brewing on the background for so long. If you're on the path of finding the truth about reality and our purpose as humans on Earth, the information that I have to share concerns you. After a lifetime of research in philosophies ranging from Buddhism to the occult, I've encountered themes and patterns along some baffling information that is beginning to be seriously studied by science. A Rational Divine Outline, The Ghost of Jesus, is the first iteration of this project, where I analyze the message of Jesus without dogmatism, fanaticism, or religious bias. You can find my work available on Amazon on the link below. If you find this work valuable, consider subscribing, sharing, and following me on social media, as it'll help others in the same path to find this information. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.